Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show with our special guest, USF Alum, Amin. I'm going to get this right here. Mysorewala. Is that right?
You got it. Yeah.
Wow, because that is real. Where does that come from? What is that?
Uh, it's originally Indian, um, but I grew up in Pakistan, and but the name is Indian. Yeah, it's from south of India. So,
Now, Cartwright means basically, Cartwright's English. It means cart maker.
oh, really? I
Uh,
didn't realize that. Huh.
yeah, yeah. Does your name have any meaning or something in there?
It so Mysore is a city in India, in south of India, and it kind of it's pretty common for names there to be from or of. Like if you're doing something, you could be a basketball walla, or or it's also where you're from. So I think my family actually was not from there, but they had business there, so they were merchants, and that's how the last name originated. Yeah,
Well,
from the city of Mysore.
since we're getting to know you really quickly here, talk about where you grew up and talk about your mom and dad.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in so my parents moved from India to Pakistan in 1947 when this country was founded. The British separated it, and I grew up in Pakistan. Uh, I went. I was lucky in that they really invested in my education early, and I was lucky enough to go to the American school there in Pakistan, in Karachi, which is a city now of 20 million people, big city. So
Big city.
uh, yeah, big city. So yeah, I went to school at the American school, and from there, came to USF, um, primarily because I liked San Francisco. So I didn't obviously have the chance to visit schools or anything before that. It was a roll of the dice. So
Now, what did your mom and dad do for a living?
yeah, so my dad was he was in like the import export business. He was a trader, and mostly he would import, products that supported the textile industry in Pakistan. And then my mom has never worked, um, and her family was actually in the textile weaving business, and so they were kind of self-employed always, and entrepreneurs. So,
Nice.
yeah,
So, did you have siblings, brothers,
I
sisters?
was an only child. Yeah,
Oh, wow. Interesting.
no, only child.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
you did get a lot of attention.
I did. Yeah, yeah. My dad's family, 8 kids. My mom's family, 9 kids, and I'm an only child. So I still haven't gotten an explanation as to why. I think it was like enough already.
So, talk about yourself a little bit when you were in high school. Where did you go to high school? And talk about what kind of kid were you in high school?
Yeah, I was. I went to high school in Karachi at the Karachi American School, and it was uh, it was about 1/3 of the students were Pakistani, local. 1/3 were Americans who were there on service duty or Marines or counselors, and then 1/3 were third nationals. So, and I went there. It was like a K through 12 school, so I went there from second grade through 12th grade, and loved sports. We played a lot of sports. We played actually a lot of basketball. We had a American coach who taught us the UCLA John Wooden system. The high post, and
Yeah.
so I was all of 5'8", but I played point guard. uh, so kind of a very mixed upbringing in that I was immersed in, in the middle of Pakistan, but I got exposed to snippets of American culture growing up, and going to high school there.
So were you a combination of academics and sports, or were you prefer one or the other, or what were you doing there?
Yeah, I think I was a combination. Yeah, I love tennis and I love sports, and I started to get more into the academics. 10th through 12th grade. It was kind of I just kind of started to grow up a little bit, and no, it was a big sacrifice for my parents to send me to that school, and so I got a little serious, in terms of it was an expensive school, and I just thought, hey, I can't screw around here. So I would say I got serious kind of early, about that. But I always loved sports.
So now you're about to graduate from high school. We knew you ended up at USF. What were some of your other thoughts and other directions you were going to go? And how in the world did you end up at USF?
Yeah. So, I applied to schools all over. I mean, my first choice was Stanford, but I couldn't get in. you know, I got into Cal, I got into Michigan, and I got into a few schools, but I chose USF because my one of my uncles was there, and my mom's brother. He's 6 years older than I am, so the large family, and my mom being the oldest, and he was. So I think his being there influenced me to come to USF, and the city. I just love the city. Just the fact to be in San Francisco. I think that was the primary reason that attracted me. And
you had an opportunity to visit the school before you decided?
No, I had no idea. Yeah, I had never been to the States before. So at 18, yeah, or I just turned 18. I came, landed at SFO. So,
Well, talk about that. Talk about your first impressions when you got to school, and what did you see when you got there?
yeah, it was a pretty big shock, just being there, and the weather, and the cool San Francisco air. I just remember feeling that right away. I still remember it when I land, back, if I'm traveling and I come back to San Francisco. I remember that first image of the air that I felt. But you know how some images get stuck. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I loved it. I wasn't sure. I thought it would be more of like a big school atmosphere than it was. So I was thinking in my head, hey, like, I don't know, how would University of Michigan be, or that's the image you have growing up of schools.
Right.
And this was an urban setting. So it was a little different, but I mean, I was a little disappointed by that, because that's not what I kind of envisioned. But at the same time, I loved the city, and just walking around, and I remember the orientation was at Ghirardelli Square, and I loved it. So yeah, but it was quite a difference. I know my uncle was going to pick me up from the airport, and he didn't make it. Somehow something happened, so I ended up taking a cab, and then I'm at his apartment. He wasn't there, and I was just standing there on Gary with my suitcase.
Lost.
What's he going to show up? There were really no phones and stuff then either, so you couldn't get in touch.
So where did you live while you were there when you first got there? Where'd you live?
I lived on Gilson. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you were in Gilson.
In the dorms. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't like Gilson. I liked Phelan, which is Burl Toller now.
Oh, is it?
For one thing, it was on top of the hill, and Gilson had paper thin walls.
Yes.
I didn't really like it there, and also to walk up that hill, I don't know why it seemed like it was a mile up.
It did. Yeah. The hills were tough to get used to, really. Yeah. No, I lived in Gilson. I was on the second floor, I think, with Jack, and you were on that floor as well. But that's how I met. And it was different because it was the SI floor, the St. Ignatius Institute had just started. And so I wasn't a part of it, but here I was like with kind of a rigorous group, institute that they had started. So that was an interesting experience as well.
Yeah. Can you talk about I had some professors that I really liked. Did you have any professors that you really liked and really kind of learned a lesson from?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny you asked that because that's one of my indelible images of school, and going through with my kids, I always hope it doesn't matter where you are, but who you get as a mentor, and I studied computer science and I had a professor, Professor Kudlik, Michael Kudlik, and he really he kind of shaped me in a lot of ways, and just getting learning how to learn. And I mean, I had done well in school, but it had come easily for me. And I think he just he kind of showed me that it's okay to struggle, it's okay to edit, it's okay to go back. It's the process. And so I would say he had a huge influence on me, just how I organized stuff and dealt with problems. And computer programming is kind of like that anyway, so it was how you set up the problem. I would say he was a big influence.
So what did you major in at USF and why?
I majored in computer science and math, and I mean, I was kind of inclined towards math, so I chose computer science. And because of Kudlik, I kind of I think I got pretty good at it, at the programming part of it. But I realized also in my senior year that I didn't really enjoy it that much, the programming part of it. So that's when I decided I'd go to business school after. And that's where kind of my passion lied. As I just loved, I took some economics courses and a couple of business classes when I was really intrigued by that, given my family background. And so I decided to apply, and then I went to UCLA for business school after. I went straight through.
So that's interesting. So you're about to leave USF and you end up going to UCLA for business school. Was that a vision that you had for your future?
I would say so, but it's like a lot of things that happen that are big. You kind of don't, at those days, I didn't kind of think it through so much, except I had a feel, I think, that, and I know when I studied the strategy of business or how brands were developed. So I would say I just discovered that I had a natural liking for it. And when I got to business school, it was so interesting that it was a lot easier for me. I mean, it was just very natural, So,
yeah. Well, I don't know, because that's not natural for me. So that sounds pretty hard. But it is interesting that you felt really drawn to it and related to it and what you were going to do. So now you're done with business school. What are you thinking? And how are you going to get your first job?
Yeah. So I was I was still on a student visa, a foreign student visa. So my thing is I wanted to stay in the country. And so I thought I got to get a job that'll sponsor me for a visa. And so that's at UCLA. I was able to get a job in New York. Um, that was my first job, was with a company called Revlon. It's a cosmetics company.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
don't, I don't use
and
it, but I've heard of it certainly.
yes, yeah, yeah. So that's where I went. Yeah, I went into the finance department, the management training, and uh, so that's where I ended up. Yeah, and they sponsored me so I could stay.
So you were in New York?
Yes, yeah,
Wow. So
yeah,
so you leave, you get to San Francisco, and now you're in the biggest city, in the country.
yeah.
What was that like?
It was amazing, Bill. I really just the first when you're young and in New York, it was just great. I mean, it was first of all the business environment is uh, pretty electric there. It's just people work, right? It's no nonsense. So
Yeah.
um, it was a great training ground, and but also so much fun, right? It's 24/7 activity, and I would say I live the stereotype. I It's probably the most fun I had, was because I was done with school. It was work and nice dinners and a little bit of partying and off to work again. you know?
Where'd you
um,
live?
uh, I lived on the east side, on like uh, 88th between second and third. So yeah.
That
You
is
lived in New York for a while, right? Or,
okay. When I was in New York, I lived I lived in Jersey the first 2 years, and then I moved into the city on 83rd and Second.
oh my God, we were 5 blocks away.
That is
Yeah.
incredible.
So
That is really incredible. Okay, so you're working for
yeah.
Revlon. How long did that last, and what was your next move?
Yeah, so I was there for I think 4 years. Yeah, 3 or 4 years, and I got uh, made a lot of great friends, and one of my very good friends was actually my boss. And he was older than I was, and he wanted to leave the company, and he wanted to start his own business. Like buy a company, and so as crazy as it was, he talked me into it, and we so we started working on it. We went through a business broker, and we bought a small company in Santa Clara. So uh, so I moved back to Santa Clara to San Francisco, and then we had this small company that we bought through. My family helped with some of the investment, and then we went to the bank and borrowed money for the rest. So it was, and that was my start with being in, kind of being in business for myself. So,
So,
but
but talk about that. Why Santa Clara, and and
mhm.
what and what was the business that you started?
Yeah, so we looked kind of all over for small, all over the country for small companies, and this company was they did it was relatively small, like 12 employees. Um, my my boss was in finance also, but he was an actual salesperson, and he that's what he wanted to get back into. And and I was, kind of his finance nerd. So that's what he would say jokingly. So and but the company made like it was a metal stamping company, uh, sh- a sheet metal company, and they made parts for like the chassis for the Apple computers. So Apple was a customer of ours, and but we did the small parts in it, but it was metal. And then everything after we bought it, these are the mistakes we made, is after we bought it, everything turned to plastic, it's like, and everything moved overseas. So 3 or 4 years into it, we really had no business, we had to close it down. So that was the first punch to the gut, but I don't know if there's any buts. On the other hand, here I was still in my 20s and I had done this already,
Yeah.
and flopped. So
So
learned
what
a
were
lot.
you thinking then? What was your next step?
So yeah, and at that time when I moved back to San Francisco, I met a girl, and that was my first and late wife, and I met her in 80, right when we moved back, mid 80s, and so she was a buyer at I don't know if you remember the store Emporium Capwell. It was a department store there in San Francisco. Yeah. And she was a buyer there. And at that point, we had been married. This company wasn't going to work. So we got married a couple of years later. We lived in San Francisco. I worked in Santa Clara. That company wasn't going to work. And basically, I came home and I said, I think I'm going to look for another job, and so I started to, and she said, what, she had just quit as a buyer and had about a year earlier and had started to work as an independent rep, where she would go sell the product to department stores. So she said, well, I've got a trade show. Do you want to see if you can help me while, for a couple of weeks or till you find a job? And I did. And, make a long story short, soon I was in the business with her. So we worked together, after that. And it was in sales, which was a total shift for me, back from, computers to finance to sales. And we sold housewares products, so like glassware and dinnerware, and we made a go of it. Yeah. So
what was the name of your company?
it was called KNA, which was for Karen and Amin, and so yeah, we started, and it turned into a good business, and from there, I we had 2 kids pretty, soon after we were married, 2 or 3 years after, and 2 years after, and 5 years after, and we had this great business, and then Karen got cancer, so and she passed away, when the kids were 9 and 5. So I had this company and I ran it. We had employees at that point, and then an opportunity came where one of the companies we were representing, we were selling for, I thought it came up for sale. So I went ahead and took another plunge and bought this company. And that was in 2002. And I still own that. That's what I do now. So I'm condensing it, but it's a long story. So
is that, what's the name of that company, or is it the same?
It's KAF Home, or KAF Home. Yeah. So, and we sell, we sell mostly textile products. So we produce for like Williams Sonoma and Crate and Barrel and TJ Maxx, Target. Yeah. So, and that's what I do. My son works with me now. We have, I think, We have 45 people that work. So it's been great. But I think the best part is I got to do everything in the business. Like I do sales, I do finance, and goes back to the passion that I had for the whole for the entire business, all the functions.
What I think is really interesting, when I talk to different groups, young people, and they talk a lot about working for somebody. And I think you're really lucky that your parents were entrepreneurs, and that is seemingly kind of the norm for you, that you have no fear to go off on your own.
You hit the nail on the head. I talk to people and they ask, and I just speaking to this entrepreneur class at I think they asked me to talk to them, and I think I draw two distinctions. First of all, I had that advantage and a good education, but I think more than that, it was like the risk taking was I was okay with it, because I had seen it right in action, and then it's timing, like meeting the right people, at the right time. I mean, obviously, my late wife and meeting her, and it was just everything clicked and worked out, in terms of work. So I think that's a big factor. Also, it's really different if you're really a true startup with zero sales, than it is if you are able to buy something that's already exists.
Yeah.
There's a distinction, and I have to recognize I didn't do the zero sales. I bought companies that already were doing something, and we grew them. But it's different than if you go out there with a total dream product and essentially knock on doors.
Well, both of those are really takes a lot of faith, a lot of belief. So have you had an opportunity to come back to USF to visit?
A couple of times, but it's been a while now. It's been probably 10 years. Jack and I and my wife, current wife, Kathleen, actually, we went to a game a few years ago. Yeah. But I think it must have been 8 or 9 years ago now.
Yeah, well, you're definitely overdue.
I know. I'd like to.
No, I just thought it would be a real benefit to have them not only to see a game, but also to speak to the students about your life and your journey. And I mean, you've had an amazing story to be able to travel, come to USF, New York, come back, your businesses. That experience would be really valuable to young people.
Yeah, I'd know that. I'd love to be able to share. I'm at that stage where I shouldn't even say stage, because that implies that we're getting old.
Exactly.
But no,
I'm not.
no, I'm not. But yeah, I'd love to do that. I feel very passionate, but more than that, I feel very grateful. That even the stumbles turned out okay for me. So
Yeah. So let's see if we can make that happen. Now we only have one game left to go in the season, so you're probably gonna miss that.
Yeah, that's it, huh? Who is that?
Well, we played Thursday.
Oh, okay.
We got one home game left. We got a road game against I think it's against BYU.
Okay.
Then unless you want to come down to Vegas for the conference tournament.
Is that it? That's happening
Vegas,
there, huh? In Vegas. Yeah. Wow. So
we gotta talk about that. But
yeah. And Bill, I live in Indiana now, so we moved 2 years ago in COVID. We bought a facility. here. So I moved here for the last few chapters in the book to get this going. But I'm very connected to San Francisco still. We still have our home there in Oakland, you know.
Where you're in Indiana? Now, where in Indiana?
Just outside of Indianapolis. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. Place
wow.
called Zionsville. Yeah.
Another big change for you. You got
Yeah.
snow
Oh
up
my
here.
God.
You got
It's a
snow.
huge change. Yes. Yeah.
That's something you
Big
never
change.
grew up with.
No, no, it's a big change. But it's good, you know, it's a nice little bubble, and I still really enjoy the work. So in that way, it's really gratifying. It's also a lot more affordable here to buy a facility than it is in California, you know,
Yes.
and make it economically viable. So,
Well, it means
but yeah, I'd love to come back and talk. Sorry.
yeah, no, that'd be awesome. And thank you so much for being on the show. You're pretty awesome. Hopefully,
thank you. Yeah.
We can get you back on the hilltop and visit a little bit, see a game, hang out, a little food.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I don't know if you remember or not, but I think Jack and I were at a Bulls game and we met you there, and you were the coach then. But I think my son will never forget, because you took him into the locker room, and so and then we had dinner. I think we went and got pizza.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he wasn't influenced too much by my goofy players.
No, he still talks about it.
Awesome.
I don't remember who your players were then, but
yeah, goofy. But I mean, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. We'll stay in touch.